Naram, the radiant jewel of the Etherian civilization, was a city straddling both the tangible and the ethereal. It sat atop a mountain plateau, carved into the bones of the world. Its towers, which spiraled toward the heavens, shimmered in hues of gold and obsidian, symbols of a people who had long mastered the mysteries of time. For centuries, the Etherians had been scholars and architects of time, guardians of the Chronaelion, a device so ancient that it was said to predate even their civilization, gifted by gods or forces from the cosmos. Unlike other societies that feared death, the Etherians viewed it as another part of the Great Cycle, for they had the power to observe the past as if it were a reflection in still waters. But they had always been cautious, treating time as a sacred river that must never be diverted. Yet Elindra, one of their brightest minds, was not content to merely observe. Since her mother's disappearance, a mysterious vanishing that no elder could explain, Elindra had grown obsessed with the idea of time as more than a passive stream. She believed it could be controlled, reshaped like clay, molded into a form that better suited those who wielded it. In her heart, she believed she could save her mother by unraveling the mysteries of the Chronaelion. But what if this obsession with changing the past went too far? What if the unbreakable laws of time were suddenly defied? Keep watching to discover how one wrong step could unravel the fate of an entire civilization. The Council of the Eons sat in judgment, their faces as still and unmoving as the statues of gods that lined their chamber. Elindra stood before them, her heart pounding, her voice steady but urgent. We have looked into the past for centuries, but all we do is observe, like children gazing into the night sky, dreaming of distant stars. We can change it. We can rewrite the stories that have bound us for too long. High Chronarch Atariel, the eldest of the council, spoke first. His voice was cold, like the endless void between the stars. You speak of dangerous things, Elindra. The Chronaelion was given to us to protect, not to manipulate. Time is a delicate thread. To pull upon it could unravel the entire tapestry of our existence. Elindra's eyes flashed. I am not suggesting we change history on a whim, but the Chronaelion could be used to save lives, to correct tragedies. Why should we stand by while time steals from us? My mother, she was taken by something beyond our understanding. But I believe the answer lies in the past. I must go back. The council murmured amongst themselves, the sound of their voices like the whispering winds of forgotten epochs. Atariel raised his hand to silence them. You seek to change what was, Elindra, but the consequences are unknown. You might save one life, but at what cost? The river of time is not a thing to be trifled with. The smallest change could create ripples that become waves. And those waves could drown us all. But Elindra was resolute. I have studied the texts. I know the risks, but I also know that time is elastic. It can bend, and it can heal. Atariel's gaze grew dark. Then you will not be stopped. But know this. If you succeed, the gods themselves may forsake you. You will walk in shadows and be forgotten by time. Without waiting for further approval, Elindra turned and left the council chambers, her decision made. She would act alone, if she had to. Beneath the towering domes of the Temple of Timekeepers, the Chronaelion pulsed with a quiet energy, as though it sensed what was coming. Elindra stood before it, her hands trembling as she activated the controls she had studied for years. Her heart raced, but her resolve was firm. The sapphire of aeons, the heart of the Chronaelion, flared to life, bathing the chamber in light. The crystalline veins of the machine began to glow, each pulse like the beat of an eternal heart. As she prepared to send her consciousness back in time, Elindra could feel the weight of the centuries pressing down on her. Her body remained in the present, anchored to the machine, while her mind traveled through the folds of time, moving swiftly toward the day her mother disappeared. She arrived at the exact moment in the past, her mother, Solène, walking down the narrow streets of the market. Elindra had rehearsed this moment in her mind 1,000 times. She would make a small change, a delay, a word, a single shift in the flow of events. As she watched her mother, Elindra felt a profound sense of both longing and fear. Could she truly alter this moment? The air around her shimmered like a mirage, the laws of time bending to her will. She moved closer, stepping toward the stall where her mother stood. In a low whisper, she spoke her mother's name. Solen. Her mother paused, turned, and looked directly at her. For a moment, recognition flickered in her eyes, as though she could sense the presence of her daughter from the future. But something was wrong. The air crackled, and the world itself seemed to shudder. A fracture, a tremor in the very fabric of reality, rippled outward from Elindra's interference. Time resisted. Elindra staggered back, her mind reeling as she was wrenched out of the past and flung back into the present. Her body collapsed to the floor of the Chronaelion chamber, gasping for breath. She had changed something, but what, she could not yet know. When Elindra returned to the present, she was met with an eerie silence. At first, nothing seemed amiss. The city of Naram still stood in all its golden glory. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city streets. But something was wrong, very wrong. The flow of time, the pulse of the city, felt out of sync. People moved sluggishly, like echoes of themselves, repeating actions in loops as though they were trapped in some unseen current. The air was thick with an unnatural stillness, and the sky above the city was no longer a vibrant blue, but a deep, swirling twilight. Time had fractured. Elindra ran through the streets, her heart pounding. She had expected a shift, a ripple, but not this. The present was splintering, collapsing under the weight of her actions. As she reached her home, she found her mother alive, sitting at the kitchen table, just as she had dreamed for years. "Mother." Elindra's voice trembled. Solen looked up, her face warm but distant, as if she were seeing Elindra through a fog. "Elindra, you're here. I've been waiting for you." But something in her voice was wrong. It lacked the life, the vibrancy that Elindra had remembered. Her mother seemed hollow. "Mother, what happened?" Elindra asked, her voice desperate. "You vanished years ago. I've been trying to find you." Solen smiled weakly, her gaze drifting toward the window. "Time is not what it seems, Elindra. You shouldn't have come for me." Suddenly the house itself seemed to shudder. The walls bent inward and the air grew cold. Elindra felt the pressure of something vast and terrible pressing against the edges of reality. It was as though the world was collapsing in on itself, a paradox too great to be sustained. Outside, the streets of Naram were beginning to distort. Buildings twisted at impossible angles, and the people, those who had once filled the city with life, had become ghostly figures, repeating the same actions over and over again, as though trapped in a loop. The past, present, and future were unraveling, merging into a chaotic tapestry that could no longer hold. Elindra's desperate search for answers led her to the hidden chambers beneath the Temple of Timekeepers. There, buried deep within the catacombs, she discovered a forgotten order, the Time Guardians. This ancient sect had long ago predicted the possibility of a temporal fracture, a paradox so great that it could unravel the very fabric of reality. The Guardians, ancient and withered, emerged from the shadows like relics of a time long forgotten. Their leader, a woman named Idris, regarded Elindra with eyes clouded by centuries of watching over the delicate balance of time. "You have done what we feared most," Idris said, her voice a whisper that seemed to echo through time itself. "The Chronaelion was not meant to be used as you have. It was a tool for observation, not alteration. The gods warned us long ago. Time is not a thing to be tampered with." "But I had to," Elindra pleaded. "I had to save my mother." "And now you have condemned us all," Idris said. "The paradox you have created is spreading. Soon, the past, present, and future will cease to exist as separate entities. The very laws of reality will break down. The only way to stop it is to repair the fracture, but that may come at a cost. What cost? Elindra asked, though she feared the answer. You, Idris said softly. You are the one who tore the thread of time. To mend it, you must become a part of the flow itself. You must exist outside of time, a guardian of the paradox, forever forgotten by the world you sought to save. Elindra's heart sank. She had never anticipated this. To become an anomaly, erased from the memories of all who knew her, living in the void between seconds. Was that truly the only way? Is there no other way? She asked, her voice trembling. Idris shook her head. The river of time is fragile, Elindra. Once broken, it can only be healed by sacrifice. Elindra stood once again before the Chronaelion, its shattered form still pulsing faintly with the last remnants of the sapphire of aeons. She knew what she had to do. With a deep breath, she stepped into the heart of the machine, her body dissolving into the shimmering flow of time. As the Chronaelion came to life one last time, Elindra's essence merged with the temporal stream. She could feel the paradox mending itself, the fractures in reality slowly healing as the past, present, and future began to realign. The ghostly figures of Naram flickered and faded, and the city returned to its former glory. But Elindra was no longer a part of it. She became a guardian of time, existing outside its flow, watching over the river to ensure it would never break again. She was forgotten by all who knew her mother included. And yet, in the quiet moments between seconds, when the world held its breath, some could still hear the faint whisper of her voice, an echo of the one who had saved them all. Centuries passed, and the story of the Etherians faded into myth. The city of Naram, once the heart of a mighty civilization, was lost to time. But the Chronaelion remained, buried deep beneath the ruins, its power dormant, waiting for the next curious soul who might dare to ask the same forbidden question. And somewhere, in the spaces between moments, Elindra watched. She had become more than a legend. She was a paradox, the eternal guardian of time, forever ensuring that the river would never break again. If you enjoyed this journey through time and want more stories like this, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure.